What's up, everybody? Thralls Metal here once again. I'm Necrotic Nick.
I'm Jammin John.
And we have yet another album review for you. So this was one I wanted to go over just because I've been a fan of this band for a while, and I really don't go over a lot of atmospheric black metal on here, but this is one of the bands that I generally kind of return to. So we are going to go over the latest offering from Drudkh. I think that's how you say it. I'm not entirely sure. This is going to be kind of fun because a lot of this was in Cyrillic. Luckily, we found translations for all the songs, not the lyrics. Those all look like the keys you don't use in a scientific calculator. But we made it through. So anyway, the album we're going over is their newest one, All Belong to the Night. This came out also on the 11th of November on Season and Mist Underground Activists label. They're like a little subset for more underground bands. This band formed in Ukraine in 2002. This is their 12th full-length overall. I actually got into them, I think it was around Eternal Turn of the Wheel or A Furrow Cut Short. Those are the ones I wrote down and they seem the most familiar to me. But I did also like their last album, They Often See Dreams About the Spring. Now, keep in mind, a lot of these titles are translated from, Ukrainian, so there might be something lost in translation there. But they seem like they kind of make some sense there. And this, as I said, is atmospheric black metal, and very much themed with nature and sort of folky, sort of pagan stuff. They've been pretty good at this in terms of just generating lush atmosphere and just kind of that sort of cold black metal aesthetic. Lots of tremolo riffs, lots of big empty passages of sort of song building. It's a pretty interesting style of black metal.
I've actually never really heard this band fully. I know the name. I'm sure I've heard them in passing, a song or two here or there on random playlists. Never heard it all the way through any album, so this was kind of new territory for me. But I mean, as you know, in Thralls past, black metal was never really my big thing. I'm starting to get into it. Still getting into it.
So this album is only 4 tracks, but it definitely clocks around the 45-minute mark, so we have long tracks. In fact, only one of these tracks is under the 10-minute mark.
Yes.
Now, the opening track, Nocturnal one, pretty much gets right to it. You have a sort of mid-pace, double time, sort of rhythm, lots of droning tremolo riffs. It's very icy, very cold, and kind of right out of the gate, we had a bit of an issue, and I'll be honest, it became kind of an issue on the rest of the album. The mix on here, all right. Certain parts of the mix, I think, are good. There's one part of the mix in particular that I just could not get past because the sound became kind of grating because it's so constant, and that would be the drums.
When it's in slower parts, they're not that bad. But anytime that there's a blast beat and or just some double kick repetition thing, those kick drums, it sounds like they put little dampener pads on the kick drum that might have had a little bit of a metallic front to it, because they're just really clicky, but not clicky in the sense of triggered, more clicky in the sense of a typewriter.
Yeah, that was the sound that I heard throughout this, because I mean, it's black metal, so you're going to get constant double bass, lots of constant blast beats. Of course, there is other stuff on here, but that's kind of a thing that repeats in black metal anyway, and it became kind of an issue. That and this opening track, when it kind of goes into this whole little flurry right away, the cymbals kind of sounded like clanging silverware and wind chimes. I don't know, the drums on here are mixed very oddly. Sometimes it sounds like one of the toms is directly mic'd up, so it's, perfect. Yeah. And then the other tom sounds like they put the mic at the end of a hallway, and then the tom drum at the other end of the hallway is just hit it hard.
Yeah, hit it as hard as you can. And then sometimes when they get into the blast sections, that snare drum just disappears.
Yeah.
And you get a lot of, like you said, kind of the clangy metallic cymbals and this typewriter kick drum.
It does hamper this, but I mean, when it comes down to music, I think it's really well written. It's very lush, lots of droning, tremolo riffs. I mean, that's kind of what you want for atmospheric, black metal. It's generating this atmosphere. It's very cold sounding. I would even say it's kind of similar to bands like Wolves on the Throne Room or Garia. I think that's how we say that band's name.
We love that band.
We love that band. We can't say that band.
Say that band. Garia. I think it's Garia. I think. If it's not, I'm sorry. But yeah, I wouldn't call it, though, as lush as Garia, though.
It's a bit more cold.
Yeah. While cold, it was also... It's not really that dark.
No.
Per se.
This is, all right, from what I gather in terms of like their theming, there's a lot of storytelling in, all their stuff. And it's kind of interesting because you think of the lyrics, I don't know what they're saying because, again,
they're fiercely Ukrainian.
Fiercely Ukrainian. And I couldn't even check the lyrics on archives because, no, I don't even know what half those symbols mean. And they seem like they use a lot less of them. Like you have like a little sentence like this, and then like, that translates to a sentence like this in terms of English. But I know that there is like a storytelling aspect to it, and I think the songs naturally kind of follow that. So if there's like a dip in terms of like darkness in a story, like it gets a little bit more sinister, or if there's like a triumphant vibe, which there's a lot of that on here.
A lot of epic feeling moments.
Like big ascending tremolo riffs. Like not everything on here is kind of like down in the dumps and dark and dingy. Like there's a lot of like soaring moments on here. Like, wow, that's kind of cool.
A lot of times, again, where it builds and then it'll cut to something a little different and then it builds again. It just, and with songs that are, 11, 12 minutes long all the time, sometimes filling that space would be difficult, but the dynamics are built kind of like a prog song.
It does flow well too. Like, you have these, longer sections where instead of like transitioning into like a another section very quickly, instead they choose to build on it. Like, that's definitely true on Nocturnal One and also very true on November. Lots of droning sections on there, but they like to isolate a lot, which I think is kind of cool because you kind of get that sort of cold emptiness. Like everything drops out, you'll get like a single guitar melody. Generally it's very distant and very cold sounding, and then it slowly starts to build up, whether that's to another section or building back up into the same section, but with just like some added melody to it or like a lead to it, something like that. And the vocals are very like kind of emotive. Like they sound like he's like calling out desperately the entire time.
It's a lot of pleading until you get to the last track, Till We Become, where it changes a little bit. I think it kind of sounds like a morning after heavy drinking, but vocalized by John Tardy. A lot of like, bleh, bleh. So yeah.
Yeah, hopefully those heaves were dry.
Moist heaves.
I think they call that vomit.
I don't know. Sometimes you can get a dry one, but I don't want to talk about it.
Till We Become the Haze is a very interesting track, and this is one that I think kind of like branches out their sound a little bit. There's a lot of different transitions in it, and there's a lot of build-ups. And it kind of builds up like post-metal. Like, post-metal likes the big, deconstruction and then, reconstructing the song and then adding something to it. This song does that a lot, but I think it kind of gets stuck in the building phase and then it transitions into something different and starts building from there. There's a section on here where everything drops out. Like you have like a big heavy, start to it, tremolo riffs, kind of galloping drums. And then it drops out and you get this like isolated melody. It's like, all right, that's cool. And you can sense that it's building up. You get like a tribal rhythm. And then it drops out again to another section. I was like, wait a minute. I feel like there should be like some sort of like crescendo here, but it moved on to another long buildup. Yeah,
like there was no payoff for the build. Like, all right, getting bigger and drop. And start all over again and drop. Like, it didn't really build to much of anything, although Till We Become the Haze is predominantly instrumental.
Yeah.
And I like those kind of isolated melodies, but I wish they went somewhere.
Yeah, that was my thing. Like, there's a lot of cool moments on it, and they're very catchy. In fact, I think some of the catchiest melodies that appear on this album are on that song. But I feel like it's kind of aimless. There's a section on here that just kind of shifts into, like, D-beat territory, but I don't feel like that one was kind of built up to that.
Right.
I don't know. But at the same time, like the D-beat section I thought was cool. Like there was a cool melody and a cool riff. But there are always cool melodies on here. Like honestly, that's just kind of a uniform thing. There's a lot of cold, dissonant melodies. It definitely creates a lot of atmosphere, and generally that's what they're going for. But I think like songs like November, they have like an opportunity to like do some really cool stuff on there. Like their intro to that song sounds almost like early Opeth. Like Morning Rise, Orchid. But then it kind of gets into like Black Gaze territory, like Alcest or Death Heaven, if you're into Death Heaven. And at that point, I think it just kind of stalls out.
And then there's another thing, bass work. Like in the song Windmills, there's this really cool kind of mid-tempo, groovy bass section where the bass goes for a walk. And you find groovy sections like that with the bass in a couple of these songs. But anytime it goes blast beaty, you lose the bass. The bass almost just totally disappears, as does the snare drum, which is weird. I like the bass in parts, but I don't like where it just drops off. Like, it seems like, again, they're trying something really cool as far as a different dynamic is concerned, but there's no payoff.
And that kind of sucks because I really like Windmills. I think that's, like, probably another favorite of mine. I like the folky melodies. They're doing a really good job of, like, the interplay between acoustic guitars and electric guitars. Like, it sounds really cool. Like, it has that cool folky touch. Like, you can picture, like, the cold fucking winter forest and all that shit. Like, it's all fucking there. But I don't know, like, I think mainly it's the production that really kind of hurts this, because there's a lot of great ideas here, and when they're on it, like, they're on it, but at the same time, you can kind of hear, like, man, that drum sound is just kind of rough.
Well, I think part of the problem is that the mix overall is mismatched. Like, there are definite parts where everything is cohesive and all the instruments sound like they're in the right places. Mostly when they slow down and get into those groovy sections, everything really shines a little bit more. Like, the drums aren't even as annoying in the slower parts. Like, when they groove, everything seems to just fit more together, but it doesn't stay as a constant, that mix. Like, anytime they go blasty, like, the mix kind of takes a shit. Where either the drums aren't always on the same plateau, or like the bass gets lost sometimes and sometimes it's present. The guitars, they appear really nicely in the melodies, but when they go blasty and ambient, it just gets lost in kind of like a fuzz.
There are some cool other, like, atmospheric effects in here. Like, I do like the chants that start off Windmill, even though it sounds like they're kind of like auto-tuned, so it sounds like robotic fucking Ukrainian Vikings out in the forest. I don't know, but it is cool. Like, it sets a mood, and there's a lot of this that is about mood, and I don't know, I kind of like that it's, you know, very triumphant, very soaring, but it also still kind of hangs in the darkness a little bit. Like, I think there's definitely more dark sections in the last track.
Yes.
And overall, I think it was a pretty decent listen, so I'm going to give it 3 stars. I think this is good. I think it definitely could have benefited from a better mix. I like the last one a little bit more, and I think the mix was a little bit more universal, and they were still kind of doing the same thing. Most of my issues are with the mix, not so much the music. I think the music is actually really well done. I'm not like the biggest atmospheric black metal fan, but I think these guys do it really well, and I like their whole, like, almost like sort of post-metal-esque sort of song building. Like, they are making these songs as big as possible and, you know, capturing a really cool storytelling dynamic in there, and I like how the songs flow with it. I do think it gets a little long in the tooth in some sections and maybe a little aimless, but at the same time, I like what they're playing. It's just how it's constructed sometimes. It just gets a little mismatched. But this is a pretty solid listen. I recommend this, again, if you like bands like Wolves in the Throne Room. I would say even Enslaved is kind of in there too. Just check them out. They're pretty solid.
It's also a 3 for me. And again, a lot of my gripes are with the mix, the uneven mix at times, and that kick drum dude, I'm telling you. Come on. There wasn't really a time where it lost my attention, which was cool for songs that long. Although I will state that the last track probably had times when it went to the well too often of what they were trying to do, and a little bit of mismatched parts. On the grand scheme of things, I never really stopped bobbing my head. It was entertaining. I really think it kind of makes a nod more towards like maybe a proggy side, but they're just not quite there yet. The builds that they do have potential to go places, but you gotta stop cutting it off too soon. Yeah, it really wasn't a bad listen. I don't have that many complaints. It was entertaining. The vocals are definitely entertaining, and I like the fact that it's cold yet not necessarily dark. They do create a pretty decent atmosphere for not using synths. I don't really think synths were so much a part of this as they were creating the atmosphere with varying guitars. That's pretty neat. I didn't have a bad time. I just for sure would tweak the mix and probably make things a little bit more even.
So, if you enjoyed this review, give it a thumbs up, and if you are new to the channel, subscribe, because we do stuff like this all the time. We are also on Patreon. If you'd like to help us out there, there's a link down below to thrallsmetal.com. Our Patreon link is there. Our shop is there too. We have shirts. We are currently out of XLR, so eventually we are going to have to get more. That was terrible.
Also coming up really shortly, I just talked to the promoter for Denver Death Fest. We're going to have an announcement coming finally here really soon. We've realized that spring tours are starting to get announced, and we gotta put our shit in there so you have something to maybe buy a ticket to. But it's coming actually really soon. You're gonna get an announcement finally. Thank fucking God.
It'll be held in Antarctica. Freddie Mercury will be headlining,
and all the the Munchkins from Munchkinland and the Wizard of Oz are going to
And Winston Churchill will MC the entire thing.
Ooh, yeah. I wasn't going to tell you that, but he did.
I know, I spoil everything.
You motherfucker. Anyway, that's coming soon. And last but not least, we want to get to the thank yous, where we thank you awkwardly over and over and over again, yet somehow you still tune in, and we appreciate that. I'm going to let Nick take the lead here, because I already thanked you in the last video. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm pretty much going to piggyback off what he said. Thank you guys so much for all the likes, the subscribes, the just coming up and talking to us, shows, all that shit. Like, it's all fucking surreal. Like, we're almost at 13,000 subscribers. It's just, yeah, it's an insane fucking number. And it's all due to you guys. We love the fact that this has grown well beyond any expectations we ever had.
Yeah,
and,
man, for real. I didn't think we would be.
Yeah. And this has become such a fun thing. And it is mainly because of you guys. I mean, the music too, of course, but you guys.
Right.
You guys fucking rule. So with that, I want to thank you one more time because you've been good.
Thank you.
And we will catch you later.